So my last video pissed you off. Well, this one's really gonna piss you off.
Initially convicted of only kidnap and assault, it is suspected that Bundy may have raped and slaughtered up to 100 young women. Sentenced to death for his terrifying crimes, Ted Bundy is undoubtedly one of the world's most evil killers.
Judge decreed that he didn't have to wear shackles or handcuffs, so he walked about the courtroom and back into the law library as a free man.
During court proceedings in Utah, Bundy actually comes outside and talks to the media.
How do you feel about the justice system in general, based on your experience?
Well, I'm sure it works, and you've got to have faith it'll work, or else you'd be reduced to some kind of, mumbling idiot.
You like eating at the Holiday Inn at Parliament at the same time. That's what I hear.
Richard Allen was escorted into a Carroll County courtroom in a yellow jumpsuit, a bulletproof vest, his arms bound to his chest and shackles on his ankles. There was a heavy police presence both inside and outside of the courthouse.
Brown, anything to say?
We sat in this narrow cell and did the interview.
Okay.
You are not guilty.
I'm not guilty. I don't like being locked up for something I didn't do, and I don't like my liberty taken away, and I don't like being treated like an animal, and I don't like people walking around and ogling me like I'm some sort of weirdo, because I'm not.
The motion included a new picture of Allen behind bars.
Now, it stated he was being treated less favorably than a convicted criminal at the Westfall correction facility, and it said his physical condition was deteriorating fast because of it.
How do you feel hearing all these people think not to share the status? There's an idea
The ski mask, pantyhose with the eyes cut out. He had a pair of handcuffs.
Richard Allen, you child murderer! Why did you do it? Shame on you! Shame on you, Richard! You're going to prison for the rest of your life! Shame on you, Richard Allen!
Step out, Mr. Bundy. What do we have here, Ken? Let's see. Oh, it's an indictment, all right. Why don't you read it to me? You're up for election, aren't you?
Mr. Bundy?
You got it, didn't you?
Mr. Bundy?
You told me that you were going to get me. He said he was going to get me, okay? You've got the indictment. It's all you're going to get. Let's read it. Let's go.
Theodore Robert Bundy, you are charged, indictment, 2 counts burglary and 2 counts murder in the first degree, 3 counts attempted murder in the first degree. In the name of and by the authority of the state of Florida, the grand jurors of the state of Florida impaneled and sworn to inquire and true presentment make in and for the county of Leon upon their oaths do present that Theodore Robert Bundy on the 15th day of January 1978 in Leon County, Florida, did then and there unlawfully enter or remain in a structure located at 661 West Jefferson Street, the dwelling of Karen Chandler and or Kathy Kleiner with the intent to commit the offense of battery therein. In the course of committing such burglary, the said Theodore Robert Bundy did make an assault upon Karen Chandler and or Kathy Kleiner, contrary to Section 81002 Florida statutes.
Very good.
And your grand jurors being present in said court further gives the court to be informed and understand that Theodore Robert Bundy on the 15th day of January 1978 in Leon County, Florida, did then and there unlawfully kill a human being, to wit, Margaret Bowman, by strangling and or beating her, and said killing was perpetrated by said Theodore Robert Bundy from or with a premeditated design or intent to effect the death of said Margaret Bowman, contrary to Section 78204 Florida statutes. And your grand jurors being present in said court further gives the court to be informed and understand that Theodore Robert Bundy on the 15th day of January 1978 in Leon County, Florida, did then and there unlawfully kill a human being, to wit, Lisa Libby, by strangling and or beating her, and said killing was perpetrated by said Theodore Robert Bundy from or with a premeditated design or intent to effect the death of said Lisa Libby.
My chance to talk to the press.
Contrary to Section 78204 Florida statute.
I'll plead not guilty right now.
And your grand jurors being present in said court further gives the court to be informed and understand that Theodore Robert Bundy on the 15th day of January in Leon County, Florida, did then and there unlawfully attempt to kill a human being, to wit, Karen Chandler, by beating her about the head and knowingly or intentionally causing great bodily harm, and said attempt was perpetrated by said Theodore Robert Bundy from or with a premeditated design or intent to effect the death of said Karen Chandler, contrary to Section 77704, 77824 Florida statutes. And your grand jurors being present in said court further give the court to be informed and understand that Theodore Robert Bundy on the 15th day of January in Leon County, Florida, did then and there unlawfully attempt to kill a human being, to wit, Kathy Kleiner, by beating her about the head and knowingly or intentionally caused great bodily harm, and said attempt was perpetrated by said Theodore Robert Bundy from or with a premeditated design or intent to effect the death of said Kathy Kleiner, contrary to Section 77704, 78204 Florida statute. And your grand jurors being present in said court further give the court to be informed and understand that Theodore Robert Bundy on the 15th day of January in Leon County, Florida, did then and there unlawfully enter or remain in a structure located at 431A Dunwoody, the dwelling of Cheryl Thomas, with the intent to commit the offense of battery therein. And in the course of committing such burglary, the said Theodore Robert Bundy did make an assault upon Cheryl Thomas, contrary to Section 81002 of Florida statutes. And your grand jurors being present in said court further give the court to be informed and understand that Theodore Robert Bundy on the 15th day of January 1978 in Leon County, Florida, did then and there unlawfully attempt to kill a human being, to wit, Cheryl Thomas, by beating her about the head and knowingly or intentionally causing great bodily harm. And said attempt was perpetrated by said Theodore Robert Bundy from or with a premeditated design or intent to effect the death of said Cheryl Thomas, contrary to Section 7704 and 78204 Florida statutes. Contrary to the form of the statute in such case made and provided and against the peace and dignity of the state of Florida. That is the indictment handed down by the grand jury. This is the capias for your arrest for burglary of the dwelling, 2 counts, murder of first degree, 2 counts, attempted murder of first degree, 3 counts. I am commanded to keep you in safe custody and bring you before the spring term of the Circuit Court 1978 to for the pending court of this county for those charges that I just read to you in case number 78-670, State of Florida versus Theodore Robert Bundy.
Is that my copy?
No, it is not.
Am I going to get a copy?
We have your copy. You have the copy.
I have a copy. How about the capias?
You'll get that.
Can I talk to the press? I mean, we've had our chance. We've displayed the prisoner now. I think it's my turn. Pardon me, which one?
I think that...
well, listen. I've been kept in isolation for 6 months. I've been kept away from the press. I've been buried by you. You've been talking for 6 months. I think it's my turn now.
Okay.
All right?
We got a court order that there won't be any press interviews.
Sure there won't be any press interviews. You've given them out. I'm gagged, you're not.
Okay. Captain Proctor will read your rights.
I'll be heard.
If you will, reading him
What I think of the indictment.
If you will, reading his rights and all upstairs, Jack. Thank you. Okay.
This man was just arrested on the horrific killing of Abby Williams and Libby German.
Delphi homicide suspect Richard Allen.
Carroll County Prosecutor Nicholas McLeland also cited the integrity of the investigation.
As Mr. Allen is now without counsel,
he would eventually confess to the kidnap, rape and murder of 30 young women between 1974 and 1978. 2 of his victims were just 12 years old.
He came across as brilliant, charismatic, smart. So you put together the evil
Convicted Utah kidnapper Theodore Bundy has escaped.
It made the county look really dumb.
At 9 a.m., Richard Allen, the man accused in the deaths of Libby German and Abby Williams, will go before a judge.
We've had an unexpected turn of events, ladies and gentlemen. Earlier this afternoon, the defense attorneys have withdrawn their representation of Mr. Allen. Mr. Baldwin made an oral motion to withdraw. I granted that oral motion to withdraw, and Mr. Rosie will be submitting a written motion to withdraw, I'm assuming within the next couple of days. They have confirmed with the court that Mr. Allen's financial situation remains static, meaning he is continuing to be entitled to appointed counsel. I will reach out to public defenders to make that appointment. As Mr. Allen is now without counsel, I've ordered him transported back to the Department of Correction.
Rick is bewildered, he's confused, he has no idea why this is going on. How can an innocent man be accused of a crime like this and have their life upended?
We had to take him to first appearance for a judge.
The affidavit has the defendant listed against Miser. Is that correct?
No, sir. I thought sure him going before the judge, it did tell who he was, because he didn't know who he was. So I bring him out to the police station. I got him out of the car and had him laid on the pavement. He kept saying, "Officer, what's wrong? Officer, what's wrong?"
Well, initially when I was placing the handcuffs on him, he kicked my feet out from under me and struck me with a handcuff that had been placed on one wrist. And of course knocked me off my feet, and that's when it started.
I was chasing him, hollering halt and so forth. Well, he turned, and all I seen was a nickel and thought it was a gun. So I leveled down and fired. So I said, well, my God, I've killed him.
And when I went to see if he was shot and been down, he grabbed my wrist, and we had a struggle for control of my revolver.
And it's a heavy pistol, and when I broke it away, swung and slapped him on the cheek. And if you see pictures right after the suspect was arrested, there's a big bruise on the side of his cheek, and that was from my pistol barrel.
Good morning, officer.
Good morning.
You've testified here this morning that you recall arriving at the Mega House approximately 3:26 a.m. The first victim you saw was Kathy Kleiner?
Yes, sir.
Did you speak to her?
No, sir, not directly. She was in shock, or appeared to be in shock, and was incoherent. So talking to her would have been to no avail.
And then you next encountered Karen Chandler?
Yes, sir.
Did you speak to her?
Yes, sir.
Can you recall that conversation?
Not word for word. The gist was that she did not know what had happened. She knew she was hurt, and she was concerned about Kathy.
They started looking for him around 5:30. They got law enforcement involved.
Hundreds of volunteers combed the trail looking for any sign of the girls. Police checking those Snapchat pictures for clues. Liberty's grandfather speaking to WLFI.
Missing, abducted, we don't know for sure. Cell phone has been pinging around town.
Describe that search, the volunteers. This is something that really, really impacted the community.
It did. We had estimating well over, I'd say, 200 to 300 volunteers, and then of course emergency responders, which included law enforcement, local firefighters. We searched well into the night and the early morning hours.
I believe in a God. As sheriff of Carroll County, Indiana, tips, cards or letters of suggestions, phone calls, and thousands of other countless ways of communicating for this moment in time. We now move forward, Indiana system and process, which is owed families in this.
Thank you so much.
That trial set to begin 7 weeks from today, when a jury will be asked to decide if Richard Allen murdered Abby Williams and Libby German. His public defenders say the judge has regularly denied crucial funding for Allen's defense, so they're now seeking help from the public. In an unusual move, Allen's defense team is now asking for public donations to hire experts for their client's defense. The campaign has already collected more than $10,000 since the fundraiser started just 30 hours ago. The website is being managed by local defense attorney David Hennessy, who's been helping both Allen and his public defenders. This afternoon, Hennessy told 13 News, "We're trying to crowdfund to make it a fair fight. All the money will go to experts, it won't go to the attorneys, and it won't go to Richard Allen." They say the crowdfunding is necessary because Allen's defense attorneys are public defenders paid for by Carroll County, and court rules require all defense expenses to first be approved by Special Judge Fran Gall before they are paid by the county. Those rules say the judge must only approve expenses that are necessary and reasonable. According to the defense team, so far Judge Gall has approved much less than requested. In a recent court filing, the defense team claimed the judge approved more than $6,000 for consultation with a firearms expert and a digital forensic expert. But she denied additional consultations with those experts as unsupported expenses. The defense attorneys claim this court's denial of funding ensures an unfair, inequitable trial. Hennessy says defense attorneys Brad Rosie and Andrew Baldwin have had to resort to paying defense experts out of their own pockets. And he says those personal expenses are getting to be too much, which is why they're now asking members of the public to make private donations.
It is a feature of our criminal justice system that each defendant must receive a fair trial. For that to happen, the defendant's attorney must have access to appropriate potential evidence. To ensure this right, the United States Supreme Court has ruled that prosecutors must disclose exculpatory evidence, which means evidence that tends to demonstrate innocence. Material has been subsequently defined as a reasonable probability that if the evidence had been disclosed to the defense, the outcome of the trial would have been different. The reasonable probability language must be sufficient to undermine the confidence in the outcome of the case. Now, however, the Supreme Court has made clear that prosecutors must turn over all materially exculpatory evidence in all circumstances, even when defendants do not ask for the evidence. Some prosecuting agencies issue guidelines on what evidence prosecutors must disclose and how they should disclose it. Other prosecuting agencies have adopted open file policies, where a defendant can access a prosecutor's entire case file. There are several possible consequences if a prosecutor does not comply with her obligations under Brady. A court can order a new trial if the failure to disclose the information could have made a difference in the initial trial. Second, the prosecutor may face disciplinary actions for violating the responsibility to disclose exculpatory evidence. Finally, if a court finds a pattern of Brady violations in a district attorney's office, a prosecuting attorney could be subjected to civil rights lawsuits. Brady v. Maryland is a landmark criminal procedure case that rivals Miranda v. Arizona in importance. It seeks to ensure that criminal defendants enjoy fair opportunities to defend themselves by providing them access to information that tends to show their innocence.
They contacted the state police, and we activated the meth suppression unit, which is a clandestine team to clean up the meth lab.
The unit, dressed in full bodysuits, spent the afternoon dismantling the lab and removing chemicals from the home's garage where the lab was found. Police arrested homeowner Chadwick Knipp and also Thomas Hardin. Both men were taken to the Tippecanoe County Jail and face felony charges for dealing and possessing meth. Squad cars had much of the 1100 block of Rochelle Drive in Lafayette blocked. An ongoing investigation brought members of the Tippecanoe County Drug Task Force and the Street Crimes Unit to this house. Police had suspicions the occupants were selling and manufacturing methamphetamine, and they were right. Investigators found an active meth lab upon arrival.
We are coming. We are coming.
Tony Liggett, from the Delphi, Carroll County Sheriff's Department. I'll get to this right here in a minute.
During her March the 8th, 2017 interview, Female 1 said that she knew Logan carried a gun everywhere he went. Female 1 knew that Logan would carry a gun in a fanny pack. Female 1 described Logan's fanny pack as one made out of a nicer material. A call placed using Logan's cell phone produced cell tower data that shows Logan's cell phone appears to be in or around his property on February the 13th, 2017 at 2:09 p.m.
This presentation varies and expands the prevailing paradigm of simply run, hide, or fight to encompass one or more subjects who participate in a random with a variety of weapons. Our goal is to provide to exercise in an active shooter event. Exercise response options to secure their safety. We feel educators know their school and students better than anyone. Shooter event. We are all too aware that educators and law enforcement officers for our children. However, we are not asking you to die by exercising the prevent and response options. Your time, our children.
Good question, James. There's even been discussion both by the public and we as investigators. What's the chances the individual, or even I'll go as far as to say maybe even individuals involved, what's the chances they are already dead somewhere? Still a wider look, but again, discussions, I think, and going back to that cautiously optimistic thing and being able to take the DNA avenue, and then be able to hopefully be able to, hone further into an individual or individuals.
All sorts of new things you can do with DNA. They've got a procedure now. You can put the DNA in and it pops out what their face probably looked like, which is better than any composite sketch. And then you've got the Y chromosomes that'll trace back the father's lineage, and you've got the mitochondrial. This guy's caught. He just doesn't know it yet.
Well, and it's somewhat related to that, James, is again an old police or law enforcement statement that once we started getting word of this kind of technology that was available, the words that came to mind for me was that for many individuals, it could very well now be, you can run, but you can't hide.
Yeah.
The Eighth Amendment to the United States Constitution, known primarily for prohibiting cruel and unusual punishment, also precludes the imposition of excessive bail. It says, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment inflicted. Stories of people held on seemingly excessive multi-million-dollar bonds have sparked the question, how much bail is too much? The statute requires a judicial officer to hold a hearing on the conditions, if any, for the release of a defendant awaiting trial. The judicial officer must release a defendant on personal recognizance, in other words, without any bail, unless a hearing shows that such release will not reasonably assure the appearance of the person as required, or will endanger the safety of any other person in the community. If the hearing shows otherwise, the judicial officer is required to impose the least restrictive conditions that will assure the defendant's presence in court and the public safety. A defendant can be detained without bail only upon a finding that no conditions would assure his or her appearance in court and public safety. The judicial officer is prohibited from imposing a financial condition that results in detention. In addition to these federal standards, all 50 states also provide for varying degrees of bail. The excessive bail clause is one of the least litigated provisions in the Bill of Rights, with only 3 cases from the Supreme Court of the United States directly addressing it. Those cases have focused on the issue of when bail can be denied. but have not otherwise definitively answered the question of what the clause means or when it applies. The court initially adopted a liberal approach to the clause in 1951 when it decided Stack versus Boyle. The defendants in Stack were charged with conspiracy to overthrow the government. They were held on $50,000 bond, which exceeded the amount usually imposed for offenses with similar penalties. The Supreme Court supported the defendant's motion to reduce the bond, emphasizing the role that bail plays in maintaining a fundamental freedom. That fundamental freedom is the traditional right to freedom before conviction, which permits the unhampered preparation of a defense and serves to prevent the infliction of punishment prior to conviction. Unless this right to bail before trial is preserved, the presumption of innocence would lose its meaning. The court found that the function of bail was to balance this right with an assurance that a defendant would stand trial and submit to sentence if found guilty. It held that bail set at a figure higher than an amount reasonably calculated to fulfill this purpose is excessive under the Eighth Amendment. The court reasoned that the bail imposed on the Stack defendants did not fulfill this purpose because there was no evidence that the defendant was a flight risk. Therefore, such a high bail was not necessary to ensure their attendance at trial.
My name is Tony Liggett. I've been a detective at the Carroll County Sheriff's Office since 2016. I have a business management degree and owned a small business in Lafayette prior to getting into law enforcement. I consider myself a workhorse, not so much of a show pony. I lead by example. If something needs done, people come to me. I will continue that same work ethic if I'm sheriff. I'm dedicated to my work and I won't ask anyone to do anything that I wouldn't or haven't done myself. As a small agency, I believe the sheriff should be a working sheriff. This means taking calls when needed, responding to calls to help keep the county secure. I'm community service minded with strong morals and ethics. The Abby and Libby investigation, it's always been a top priority for me. It will continue to be when I'm sheriff. It was something that was horrific and shook us all to the core. We need to make it a priority to retain the staff that we currently have, that both in the jail and on the road. We're short 2 road guys at the moment, and we're budgeted for 7 jail staff, and we only have 6. It affects many aspects of what we do, including how we respond to calls and response time. I think we kind of could tell from the last guys that it's a nationwide problem. It's not a problem with just Carroll County. So we have to figure out ways to keep these people that already work here, keep them here. Other agencies have the same problems, and they tempt our people to leave with higher wages, sign-on bonuses, and things like that. However, it's not working right now. We can't take them anywhere. I don't know what the reasoning is behind that, and I would like to continue that, but just not how it's done right now. I don't know that answer, so I think that would need to be investigated, and then I could have some more ideas. It's going to cost a lot of money. We're talking about human resource people and not being able to afford them.
So that's an interesting topic to bring up because I've spoken to several other departments besides just some friends, and they're shocked by what they've seen. They can't believe that people in the department would wear a shirt representing somebody else. It causes division and other things inside the department. You want to talk about leadership? That's not a good way to lead. It causes hurt feelings amongst others. And I've felt it. Other people in my department have felt it. About leadership. There's a lot about leadership. More than just leading people. It's about doing the right thing. Last debate we had people come up and said that they had calls that didn't even get responded to. There was 2 people in that. That takes leadership to get that fixed. Except there's actually 3 people that said it. One of them had said it took him 3 months to get somebody to take a theft report. Shouldn't happen. You can't go and throw parties with your buddies and expect them, if they get in trouble, that you're going to correct the problem. I don't think so. You need good, solid leadership. You need good people underneath you. We got good people. We do. But there's a few things that need ironed out. And that's all I have to say on that.
Mr. Thomas is the chief deputy of the sheriff's department. I don't know what he's waiting on if there's problems to iron out. He's part of the administration. He can do that right now. He's had 7.5 years to be able to do that. We have a wonderful group of people that work at the sheriff's department, in the jail, in the dispatch. Those people want the accountability. Those people came to me that want body cams. Those same people have high expectations, and they rise to the occasion every single time. And if they don't, we have a conversation. I'm the guy that reviews every report that comes to the sheriff's department and basically approves it. Is there more follow-up that's needed? What else needs to be done? I'm that guy that does it, and I'm the first one to kick it back and say, no, you need to do more. You need to do this. And they take what I say and they go do it.
Yeah, you're right. I'm chief deputy. I tried to write up somebody once and I got thrown under the bus for it. So I haven't done it since. So that's part of it. That's 7.5 years of just having to stay where I'm at, put in my place. And as far as, there's a difference between having to write somebody up and just telling them to get a report fixed.
Okay, sure.
A chief deputy has to have the same authority that the sheriff has. Chief deputy is going to be loyal to the sheriff. The sheriff's got to be loyal to the chief deputy. If the chief deputy says something, that is the same as coming from the sheriff. But you've got to support one another. You've got to have a loyalty, and you've got to have strength.
Dash cams, GPS in cars enabled, so that you know where the cars are going, that kind of thing. And let's start with Mike.
Absolutely, I'm all for body cams. I've actually got one. The prosecutor bought it for me probably about 6 years ago, I think. And they're absolutely needed. I don't know how many times we get complaints on our deputies that something was done that really wasn't done. And when you go back and look at the video and see it for yourself, you know, they say every picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, so are videos and the sound on them. And I think to have body cams, we need to find a way to get those. There are grants out there, but some of them are drying up. We need to get on it. A lot of the manufacturers will help you get those grants. And then some of them work together with the dash cams as well. So that when you get out of the car, it gives you almost a 360-degree look at what's going on. And that's something we need. We also need our GPS working in our cars so that everybody knows where everybody's at. We recently had an incident where it took a while for the officers to find the other one. If we had GPS working in the cars, that wouldn't have been a problem. And for the officer's safety mainly. And it also allows us to look and see who's the closest officer so the officer don't have to drive clear across the county when there was someone closer. We definitely need body cams and everything else that can go along with it. We need to find funding for it.
Tony, how about you?
Absolutely, and want body cameras. We used to have in-car cameras, and they all just quit working, and it's expensive to get them back. I actually looked into body cameras about a year ago. It's going to cost for the Axon to do everything that Mike just talked about. When you get out of your car and it'll activate, it's going to cost about $100,000. So it's not a cheap endeavor. There are grants that I believe we could get to obtain those things. absolutely in favor of body cams. As far as the GPS in the cars, we have the modems and things to make that work, but our computers will crash. Most of our computers crash because they're so old. We need to get upgraded computer laptops in the cars to make that work. The guys want it too. It is an officer safety issue. The guys want that as well. But it's not like dispatch gives us a call and whoever's closest doesn't say anything and lets his partner that's across the county take it. Generally speaking, you tell the dispatch where you're at, or dispatch asks where we're at, and we tell them. So it's really not a big problem as far as responding to calls and who's closest. That's taken care of.
Well, we all know with the conditions throughout the country today that even if you do have body cameras, you're still questioned about whether you've taken the right action or whether you haven't. And when it comes right down to it, the lawsuits are filed because somebody didn't use proper conduct or follow standard operating procedures or practice policies. If you don't have proof to submit in court, kind of behind the 8 ball. I respectfully disagree with Detective Liggett here on $100,000 for a camera system for this department. I think that's probably a little bit overinflated. I do think it's necessary that each officer have it. But the GPS system that it's my understanding is now installed at the jail, the current jail, and is capable of tracking cars. I can't understand why the GPS systems aren't working. Other than the fact if it is computers, why haven't they been updated? Who's being held accountable for all these issues that we've got? Detective Liggett, I'll ask you. If you're the man in charge and you get things done, how come you haven't got this taken care of?
I'm Detective Liggett. I submitted quotes for body cameras as that was what I was asked to do. And you're kind of right, a little bit, if I could fit. The body cameras themselves are cheap. You can get a body camera for pretty cheap, almost nothing. It's the storage, it's the data storage that costs so much money. And that $100,000 I was talking about goes along the lines with what Mike was talking about, with all the bells and whistles, and you don't have to activate it. You draw your gun and it automatically turns your camera on. That was the top end. Cameras are cheap, the storage is what costs so much.
I'd like to respond to that. In dealing with jails, one of the things that was one of my issues that I had to take care of was helping sheriffs come up with a system that they could record incidents in their jails with, especially when they had issues with offenders that created problems. It was a recommendation at that time, because of litigation, that should have a recording system set up that at least records and saves for at least 90 days, and that was a 90-day minimum. With the exception if you had a case where you thought it might come back, you might see it again, then you want to store that information. I also helped in getting good systems put into the jails of that particular case. Again, I asked the question, who's running the department? Who's accountable for all this stuff? You gotta have a good leader.
Well, for starters, everybody's really coming down on the guys. January of last year, I spoke with all of them about running for sheriff, and they talked about aspects that they liked about me as a leader. That I was a guy that was getting things done, that was in the trenches with them, that they knew if they needed something or something bad was happening, I was right there with them. So when I turn around, I guess I see the blue shirts, as Lee calls them, and that makes me feel proud.
You've got to lead by example. I appreciate the comments that Tony said about the guys coming to him, and he was in the trenches with them. I really do. But you know, if you're objective, you've got to talk to everyone, not just one individual. And I think one of the things that I've been most disappointed in during this campaign is the fact that I've reached out to some of these deputies here, some of these guys in the blue shirts. I said I'd be willing to sit down and talk to you. Listen to your wants, your needs. What is it you want from a leader? How do I know what you want if you won't even sit down and talk to me about it? I never even got a response back from you. Now, how objective can that be? Thank you.
Tony?
So like I said earlier, you have to forge bonds with, like Delphi School and their kids in high school that are going through the law enforcement class. We need to be there encouraging them to want to be police officers. Everything if you watch the news, everything's negative. There's nothing good about the police anymore. So we have to go there and make these high school kids or college kids at Ivy Tech, we have to make them aware that it is still a very noble profession. Think outside the box. I've seen other departments making videos highlighting, their canine unit or their SWAT team or something like that. But you have to think outside the box and do things like that to try and recruit those people. I don't view it as micromanaging. I think people want a line drawn in the sand and it's equal for everybody. Don't cross this line, this is bad. And you don't pick and choose who gets to, test that line or cross that line. Everybody needs to be on the same exact page. That makes for a good work environment. That's what people want.
There are rumors that are going around via social media that would lead people to believe that we know this person is not local. We don't want people to rationalize away their tip because they believe this person cannot be local. We don't want them to rationalize away their tip because they think this person is not local. So please, if you know anything, if you think you know something, trust your gut and give us a call. If you know somebody who owns a blue coat, if you know somebody who frequents those trails, if you know anything, we're asking for those tips.
Everything that's going on with this, Vinny, is insane to me. And I know Kevin and I were all in there for the last hearing when all this was being litigated in terms of them trying to get him moved. And we first heard about these guards using the camcorder to photograph and to videotape the attorney visits. And it was a situation where we were not made aware that they were turning him towards the window so that they could see his mouth. So, and as a criminal defense attorney, that's like me being able to talk to my client is sacrosanct in terms of privacy when I'm trying to prepare for trial. If I think that guards are even anywhere near earshot, I'm not talking at all. And I'm telling my client not to talk at all about anything substantive with the case. But your question's a fascinating one because I would definitely 100% be trying to get it tossed out as well as through the poisonous tree because it all stems from that warrant. If you don't have the warrant, you don't have the bullet. And then the question becomes, is mere presence at the bridge, which he volunteered that information, is that enough for the warrant to stand. That's ultimately what Judge Gall, presuming that these women come in and testify, we're talking about the witnesses, that they say, hey, Liggett lied. This is what we said, and this is what Liggett put in his affidavit. It's clearly a lie. And if Gall says, okay, well, I'm going to pull those out, does the warrant still have enough probable cause to stand on its own 2 feet without that timeline? That's ultimately what she's going to be charged with, and it's going to be tough for her, to be honest with you.
One of the aspects of this investigation which does confuse me, however, is that it seemed in 2019 during the press conference held by Doug Carter, that they were on the right track at that stage. This was a local individual, someone who they had maybe interviewed or spoken to members of their family, someone who may be even hiding in plain sight. It seemed at that point in time they were on the right track. How has this been overlooked? Now, I would wholeheartedly agree that using a term such as inept and phrases such as, there's been failures in this investigation, I would say that would be fairly harsh. If Richard Allen resided on Mars or didn't fit the profile of the man walking across the bridge. They had all of the information in front of their eyes. So how do we not see this as inept? These are professionals. These are people who supposedly dedicate their lives to their profession in order to be the best they can. Not only that, but they had the best of the best, the FBI, working on this case. Yet something somewhere has gone completely awry. Something is really incredibly wrong, I believe, with this case. And I don't know whether there's something deeper going on here. I've got no idea. Hopefully in time, all will be uncovered.
We have Mr. Todd Click. When I was detective, I received an extensive amount of training, mainly focusing in on forensic computer investigations, death investigations, homicide investigations, robbery investigations. I was an investigator for the Indiana Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. A lot of those investigations were not only done here in Rushville, but the southeastern part of Indiana. A lot of child molest, child exploitation cases. I went through a week-long training in St. Louis, Missouri on suspicious death and homicide investigations. Received some training from some of the top homicide investigators in the United States. And then when I became assistant chief, gears kind of switched a little bit, and a lot more human resource training, internal affairs investigations training, things of that nature.
They have lots of firsts in the academy, and this is really the first big uniform President's Day, and it's one of the highlights for me with the recruit school experience, and they're so proud. Good morning. Good morning, sir. Keep that white t-shirt down below the top of your collar, okay? Yes, sir. Keep your white line. Keep that. We're gonna have to get some different shirts for you. Yes, sir. But keep that white line down below your tie line, okay? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Reports today from the staff have come a long ways. Actually, it's way harder for them. That over time, it's very hard. You may not like the purpose, you may not like the reason, but we're not asking your opinion. Keep your head in this. Keep your head in this. Because before you know it, you'll take it off for the last time. Don't lose sight of that. Some of you will become cynical and hateful. None of us are perfect, right? We have to identify what needs some attention, and that's exactly what we'll do. We're not through this yet. And it's certainly my hope that I don't get that call and say that we've had a spread at the ILEA that we found ourselves in. The most ever. The most ever. Do not let your guard down, please, especially when you go home today and in the coming weeks. So we'll see what the future might hold. Lieutenant Hannah.
Was there DNA?
I can't confirm or deny either way, Mike. That's one of those parts that's still part of the evidence process. I really can't speak to that. I know, and I think I may know, maybe not. There was some confusion, I know, when I went live with Fox 59 there a couple weeks back. There was a line of questions that was presented to me, all basically in the same sentence, and I know they included the word DNA. And what reply I was wanting to offer actually was that in evidence, in essence, all evidence, we had asked the lab to actually fast track or expedite that process so we could get results back, and that was the purpose of my statement. For what it's worth, I have since received a in-person apology from an executive director, or producer, I should say, from the station in regard to that, because they went back and reviewed their video and audio and discovered that I did not actually discuss DNA. They were the ones that initially prompted that, and I did not respond specifically. So I was addressing in regard to all physical evidence. All crime scenes have some form, whether it be minute all the way up to larger items, have physical evidence. And so to say that there's no evidence would not be a correct statement. So there is evidence. It's just our focus now is trying to get those lab results back.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because it's been like 3 weeks, and I was kind of curious if there was DNA, because it seemed like that would have been back by now.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah. The thing is, we're kind of we're at the liberty of the labs involved. That's obviously, we have no in-house lab of our own, and so we can't exactly call the shots, so to say, that we want this back by Tuesday. That's not the way it works, and so we're on their timeline as far as that's concerned. I guess I'll say a forensics standpoint as well. So, or the maybe CSI aspect. So, practically anything the Bureau can offer, they've offered, and maybe not every aspect or every resource, but a good portion of what they have to offer, they've offered to us, and we've accepted, obviously. Yeah, I follow what you're saying there. Again, it's just, all aspects of the evidence that we anticipated, but it's also, I guess, I'll also resort back to, we're going to end up, I feel confident we're going to end up in a court of law one of these days with this situation, and for us to put too much of a rush on this, and, like I've been saying, we're double-crossing the T's and double-dotting the I's, because, you may or may not be aware of, in a court of law, if there's just one little spark of doubt that's planted in a court of law, we lose the case, and we don't want that. In relation to the crime scene itself, again, I can't really speak to that in general over the whole situation, in that we don't specifically know whether or not how many we may be involved with. That's why you keep hearing us say either individual or individuals. As far as the evidence is concerned, I really can't speak to anything in relation to that, but we're still, because we don't know at this stage, we're using the plural and saying individuals as well, because we believe, we lean toward the single individual that's pictured, but it is quite possible there may have been more than one individual involved. So that's still an avenue we're pursuing. Another good question, Mike. Initially that's where we, obviously with most investigations, if, the local focal point is not gaining us anything, that's why the search is expanded, because at this stage nothing's really turning up that I'm aware of at the local level. So that's why it's expanded, in essence, nationwide, and so that's why we reach out to people nationwide at this stage to provide us with information. So, again, I really can't speak to, obviously, once we have someone in custody, we'll know. But at this stage, it's a guess.
We believe his voice is distinctive enough that somebody would recognize it.
Who found them?
Unfortunately, their bodies were found by members of an organized search party.
Is there DNA evidence? You have his voice on tape. Do you feel confident about this?
We are confident that we're going to catch the person and or persons that killed these young ladies.
We've learned that DNA testing has been put on the fast track, the voice being analyzed.
Hopefully someone recognized that voice, and to me it appears they're saying down the hill, like they're directing the young ladies where to go. It sounds like might even be a little exasperated, like he had told them to do that before and they weren't quite listening, and he's telling them to do it.
Detectives aren't saying whether the girls were killed by the creek or whether their bodies were just dumped there.
You think this is one person or two people?
Well, quite frankly, we don't know. We're open to all possibilities. We know at the very least, at least we believe, the evidence indicates that the person in the photograph has participated, but we don't know if there were more people.
I don't go anywhere without somebody else, so.
People are afraid.
Yeah.
This area where the girls were killed is a state park, so safe that there was no need for surveillance cameras on the trail. Dan McCain from the Wabash and Erie Canal Association tells us they're now considering installing cameras.
We got 10 miles of trail, so it's a little extensive to try to cover all of it.
Heartbreaking, isn't it?
It is.
Every time it rings, we wonder if that's going to be the call, the person, whatever it is, the clue that we need to find who it is.
And at the spot where the bodies were found, a makeshift memorial. Flowers mark the spot where Abby and Libby were likely snatched away on the trail. Two little girls who lost their lives at the hands of a cold-blooded monster.
This trail was where the girls took some of their last steps.
It's heartbreaking to us, and that's why we are working so hard to get the person and or persons into custody to face charges for the murder of Liberty German and Abigail Williams.
That's just unheard of in Indiana.
It's unprecedented. What would be our protocol if we had two that were active at the same time?
Right.
And we do have a protocol for that. So we started our program it was in October of 2002. But probably the important thing is to talk about what does it require.
Right, because I know we've gotten some inquiries from the media and say, kind of questioning the timetable of what it takes. And we do require some pretty stringent requirements because we don't want to put everything out.
No, we don't. And we don't. First and foremost, excuse me. First and foremost, the child has to be under the age of 18. That's a solid rock. That doesn't change. They have to be under the age of 18 or death. And we get that information from the investigators.
And a lot of times that takes a while to check into.
It does, and it takes some investigative work to do that.
Right.
Do we have a named suspect? Do we have a potential vehicle? A good description of the vehicle?
Again, I think we're looking at about putting out good information to get good information back.
Exactly. The old saying with computers used to be garbage in, garbage out. You get more specific tips
within our agency, but that does not prohibit another police agency from doing their own.
That's true. There's no, for lack of a better word, there's no copyright. There are other agencies in Indiana that if they feel that it rises to the level for their purposes, I'd try to imitate it now, but I don't want people to make fun of me. So that's
not on this show, Dave.
Never,
that would
never. Well, when the agency contacts us, typically they've already been investigating, and typically some of their local media is already aware, and they are completing information in the IDAX and NCIC, the National Crime Information Center, and the IDAX is the Indiana Information Center where we keep localized information. So
that goes across the country.
And that goes nationwide.
Yes.
Yes. And then we would, of course, want them to be found so they're in that national database. So along with that information, we're also getting photos. We put those photos on the website. There's a dedicated website. They get the tip directly. It doesn't go through a third party.
Okay.
So these are all the things that are put together to make it happen. One of the questions you and I both received, in a perfect world, if this were a TV show, all of those things would happen instantaneously.
Right.
But we don't live in a perfect world. It takes time for each of those to come out. Usually they fall into place within a matter of minutes, anywhere from 5, 7, 10 minutes of each other, and everything is there and accessible.
That just recently arrived here in Indiana.
That did. And well, it didn't recently arrive. It's been here for a while. We originally opted not to use it because there was some fear, and some people could say the fear was false. Some could say that it's still valid. We've had those questions. I don't think, to my knowledge, that's been a case in any other state that's utilized it. So we thought, well, maybe that really isn't a well thought out position. And they are the ones that help coordinate that. So that's another part of the pieces of moving parts that all have to come together for this alert to be successful.
And they also have requirements that they require for us to look through. So there's another time management piece of the puzzle.
Another thing that we get asked all the time is it seems like these happen a lot. Now, over the past week, I would have to agree. It seems like it's happened a lot.
Right.
But when you look at the overall stats since we've been doing this, of those 139 requests, only 44 have been granted. So right around a third. And then tragically, over the course of time from 2002 to today, we have had 5 children that were found deceased. And we have one child, an infant, that is still reported as missing. And we don't have high hopes that child is still alive.
They're saying, I'm tired of listening to this.
It becomes the boy that cried wolf. There were some states, and they've changed that now, and I'm not even going to mention the state's name. Every child is precious. I agree. Every child is precious, regardless of the circumstance. And the parents are upset every day. We don't want to do that, and we don't.
Yeah. Well, again, you don't want to get the boy that cried wolf. A lot of information to shove out there very quickly, but roadshow out.
This is a really big day for us. I long for today so that we could take just a moment in time to be somewhat normal in such a very, very sad, difficult time. My dad started in '64.
Okay. I was there in '63.
And visiting guest. Let me start by expressing how humbled I am. As an example to me of what happens when a community comes together with a common cause. And this common cause was born because we have hard days ahead. We'll make a little bit of history today. We'll make a little bit of Indiana history.
How cool is that?
The coolest thing in the world. I stand here with a heavy heart over the heinous and senseless acts of violence. We really didn't know each other, but they had this idea that they were going to. We started with those rural areas around Indiana where there's a high likelihood of our folks being the first on the scene of these kinds of situations and incidents, whether it be on or off duty. Entrenched in my mind forever. I'll never forget that scene. I'll never forget standing there with my wife, my daughter, and you. History in the making at this very moment in our state's history, but also within our agency's history. This has never happened before, and it will never happen again. Frankly, I'm having a hard time bringing words to such evil, especially the surviving family members. That events such as this can shake the very conscience of our faith to its essence and its very core. But it's also times like these that offers the opportunity for the best of people to shine through. From afar, And we can certainly talk more about that in the future, but it gives people the opportunity to participate in this process and in this initiative anywhere in Indiana at any time with any group that they choose. So it's, I think it's certainly a thing of the future. But it did, watching from afar. Because we really never know when this is going to end. Is a really, really big deal. I so hope that you too have had similar experiences, but because we cannot allow evil acts. Absolutely terrific, inspiring leader. This will be a memory that will be etched in my mind again, forever. Unless medical science jumps way out ahead of us, we will not be here. We must remain resolute in our determination, our resolve, and our commitment to bring peace to our nation, our state, and to our communities, north, south, east, and west. It was a really big deal for us. Number one, even when life has to go on. But today is the day when this is over, we can surround them once again for eternity. With us today, here or abroad. And actually saved lives within the ISP organization over time for the folks around Indiana. Again, I'd be remiss to not mention one more time, and these are the kinds of things that happen when communities trust us, and they believe in us, and they understand that we certainly do have needs. I've seen it so many times with my very eyes. What are you doing for others? And I hope that just maybe it might drive you. When you were here at this very site to clean these grounds, and about commitment, self-service, and self-sacrifice each and every day at each and every one of these events. And I'm so very, very proud of it. All over Indiana, with so many acts, imagine the possibility, service, and kindness for others that your family members have made. Never was so much owed by so many to so few. To you and your families, thank you for being here, and I hope that you'll enjoy.
For you guys that don't know me from the IMPD, I'm the commander, and sharing that experience of doing it. Pretty blessed in being able to do that, and I'm very pleased to be a part of that.
I hope you'll always remember the first time we ever did this, and as the first time we ever melded in Indiana, because it's never happened before for what you do. I've seen you all at your very, very best. I've seen you also in your very darkest of times. To, in essence, change who you are and the way you think. Many of you probably didn't look forward to today. Oh, today's a perfect day. Watching the sun come up, not a cloud in the sky, about 70 degrees, I think. Perfect at the same time. So I wish I could start all over, because I'd start all over today. Yeah. I would trade positions with any one of these folks and start all over. So now's the time, even though it might not seem like it. It's a tremendous time. This is pretty cool. Encourage other people to come into this profession, even though it's difficult right now at the same time. Together,
So my last video pissed you off. Well, this one's really gonna piss you off. So you don't like my hat? You think I'm the murderer because I'm wearing this hat, right? Well, how about this hat? Does this hat trigger you?